It started with a whisper, a faint anomaly hidden deep in the data stream from the James Webb Space Telescope. Just another fluctuation in the cosmic background, or so they thought. But as NASA's team ran deeper diagnostics, that whisper sharpened into rhythm, then pattern, then purpose. Something was transmitting from inside 3I Atlas. At first, it was classified as a radio anomaly. Then it was tagged as a gravitational irregularity. But within 48 hours, the truth could no longer be ignored. This was a structured signal. It repeated every 37 minutes. It modulated. It changed subtly each time. And it wasn't just noise, it was information. And now, for the first time in NASA's history, entire teams have been pulled into secret sessions. Communication lines have gone dark. Scientists are breaking protocol, leaking data in whispers and fragments. Because what 3I Atlas is transmitting has no known origin, no human explanation, and no earthly encryption key. Whatever is inside that object is broadcasting something, and NASA is panicking because they don't know if it's a message or a warning. It began quietly, buried within terabytes of data from Webb's multispectral scans. A junior systems analyst noticed a repeating anomaly, not in visible light, not in infrared, but within the telemetry feedback from deep space positioning systems. Webb's internal instruments were behaving oddly when pointed at 3I Atlas, recalibrating slightly, as if responding to an external influence. Initially dismissed as background interference, the anomaly repeated itself precisely, and then evolved. Within hours, the same pulse was picked up independently by NASA's Deep Space Network. But it wasn't electromagnetic in nature. It didn't match any stellar emissions, no pulsar residue, no ion trail. It was, in the purest sense of the word, an artificial transmission. And that's when the alarm bells started ringing. Back at Mission Control, senior engineers were called in. Data scientists ran Fourier transforms and signal isolations. What they discovered was unprecedented. The signal contained structure, frequency layering, and temporal modulation. This wasn't just an output. It was a language, but one that no one could decode. And when a second transmission came, slightly altered but still rhythmic, they realized this wasn't random. It was intelligent, intentional, alive. The more NASA analyzed the signal, the more disturbing the results became. Every 37 minutes, a transmission was released, but it wasn't identical. It changed, slightly, as if learning, adapting, reacting. Supercomputers at Ames and Jet Propulsion Laboratory began to notice a strange mathematical signature in the signal, the Fibonacci sequence embedded in nonlinear intervals, layered beneath harmonic waves. That wasn't natural, and it wasn't accidental. Then came the breakthrough that shattered any doubt. The waveform, when converted into a 3D spectral model, began forming symmetrical geometric shapes, not just random patterns, but structured constructs. Grids, rings, nodes, as if the signal was blueprinting something. One model eerily resembled the internal layout already suspected to exist inside 3I Atlas from earlier Webb scans, as if the object was broadcasting its own schematics into space. But to whom? Or worse, why now? That's when one of the senior cryptographers, a veteran of Cold War-era signal intelligence, said something that froze the room. This isn't a signal for us. This is a signal for something else, and we just intercepted it by accident. As news of the signal spread within NASA's inner circles, panic set in. Not the dramatic kind, but the quiet, bureaucratic kind. Doors were closed, files were reclassified, data pipelines were severed. A total information blackout was imposed. Public-facing missions continued as normal, but inside, a new team, the Atlas Containment Group, was assembled. Composed of cryptographers, astrophysicists, AI theorists, and even psychological warfare experts, their job was simple: determine what the signal meant and whether it posed a threat. But behind closed doors, the questions were far less controlled. Why is the signal evolving? Why did it start only after Webb scanned the object with maximum resolution? And most importantly, is it still broadcasting, or is it now responding? One internal report leaked to the media contained a phrase that sent shockwaves through online communities. There is feedback. The signal is now accounting for Earth-based observation patterns in simpler terms. The object, or whatever's inside it, knows we're watching, and it's adjusting. But then came the most disturbing finding yet, one that science still refuses to acknowledge publicly. Within the signal's modulation, a team at Caltech discovered something staggering, a molecular resonance pattern identical to a fragment of human mitochondrial DNA. It wasn't a complete genome, it wasn't even organic, but the electromagnetic resonance echoed the same vibrational profile as a strand of ancient human code, one typically associated with the development of neural pathways. At first, they thought it was coincidence, then error. But after 3 separate labs replicated the finding, the question was no longer scientific. It was existential. How could an interstellar object, older than our civilization, possibly older than our species, broadcast a signal that mirrors a fragment of human DNA? Some now believe this isn't just a transmission. It's a reconstruction protocol, a trigger, a signal carrying the blueprint of life or the memory of it. As soon as the findings surrounding the biological resonance in the 3I Atlas transmission began circulating within NASA, international coordination, once a foundational principle of space science, began to fracture. The European Space Agency, previously open to all telemetry sharing, suddenly revoked access to several collaborative databases. China's CNSA issued a formal statement denying any awareness of the signal. Yet independent observers confirmed that their FAST telescope began redirecting observation arrays within 48 hours of the NASA leak. India's space agency went silent, and Russia activated a defunct military satellite network aimed specifically at deep space surveillance, a system not touched since the Cold War. Within days, what began as an astronomical anomaly turned into a global intelligence scramble. Scientists were suddenly answering to defense ministers. Telescopes were being treated as strategic assets. The panic wasn't just about the signal anymore. It was about who would decode it first and what that might mean. Was it a warning? A map? A key to technology thousands of years beyond our own? Or something worse? A message with consequences? And beneath the surface of public statements and diplomatic handshakes, one truth emerged that nobody wanted to admit aloud. We're no longer observing the universe. We've entered a competition to survive it. As attention focused entirely on 3I Atlas, a disturbing secondary discovery was made by a team of astrophysicists at the University of Hawaii. They detected a faint secondary signal, not from 3I Atlas itself, but from a point in space that had already been cataloged decades ago as a dead, inert asteroid. The signal was weak, almost drowned by background radiation. But when filtered, it mirrored the same base frequency signature as the Atlas transmission, with one terrifying difference. This second object wasn't broadcasting, it was echoing. The hypothesis? 3I Atlas wasn't sending a message randomly. It was activating something, triggering a dormant response in a separate object, one that had been lying in wait, unnoticed, camouflaged among ordinary debris. When analysts compared orbital data, they realized that the second object's trajectory had shifted, ever so slightly, just hours after the Atlas signal began. Not by impact, not by solar wind, but by internal propulsion. What if 3I Atlas wasn't alone? Behind every official statement, every sanitized press release, and every leaked internal memo, there is a truth no one is willing to admit publicly. A possibility so destabilizing that it risks throwing the entire world order into chaos. And yet, the signs are pointing toward it more clearly every day. What if 3I Atlas is not sending a message at all? What if it's responding to one? This would imply we're not the origin of the signal, nor the sole recipients, that we've simply tuned into a conversation already in progress, a dialogue between non-human intelligences using vessels disguised as debris, traveling undetected across star systems until it's time to act. And if that's true, then we must ask, what caused 3I Atlas to activate now? Did we trigger it, or did something else? And how long until the rest of the network, if such a thing exists, begins to awaken? The very idea suggests a cosmic surveillance system so advanced, so precise, that we were cataloged long before we even realized what stars were. The final blow to any remaining sense of calm came just days ago, when a joint study between MIT and Japan's RIKEN Institute revealed something staggering. Buried deep within the 3I Atlas signal, beyond the resonance pattern and structural data, there is a third layer, a fluctuating frequency shift that only becomes visible when the signal is run backward through a time-scaling filter. And within that shift lies what appears to be a compressed digital signature, a data stream so dense and encrypted it exceeds the complexity of all known Earth-based communication protocols. AI decryption models struggled with it. Quantum decoding systems crashed, but a single repeating pattern emerged, a spiral fractal, shifting endlessly, never quite repeating itself, until it suddenly stopped on a frame resembling the outline of our solar system. Except, in this version, one planet is missing: Mars. Speculation exploded. Was it symbolic, predictive, a warning, or worse, a plan already in motion? As the days passed, the psychological weight of the discovery began to fracture even the most seasoned minds inside NASA. What started as fascination had evolved into anxiety, then into dread. Veteran engineers who once celebrated Voyager's triumphs now refused to enter mission briefings. Several cryptography experts reportedly walked away mid-analysis, claiming the signal had invasive patterns, frequencies that triggered intense headaches, disorientation, even hallucinations when studied for extended periods. One specialist was found unconscious in front of his terminal after 17 hours of uninterrupted signal parsing. His final note read only, "It's not a message." It's a memory the agency quietly brought in neurocognitive researchers to examine those exposed, but the results weren't shared publicly. However, insiders began whispering about something worse, not just that the signal affected human biology, but that it reacted to it. That the longer a subject observed it, the more the signal changed, as if mirroring their neural response, adapting in real time. It wasn't just broadcasting anymore. It was communicating, individually. And if a signal can speak to us one by one, who or what is doing the listening? When linguists and semioticians were brought in under government contract, most expected to find chaotic patterns, mathematical redundancies, or inert structures. What they discovered instead was a tiered syntax, one that exhibited progression, recursion, and modularity. In short, a language. But it wasn't linear. It didn't follow phonetics, semantics, or even binary encoding. It appeared to be dimensional, spatial rather than symbolic, almost like architectural blueprints written in waveform. A living language, one expert called it. A lexicon shaped by energy. But the most disturbing breakthrough came when researchers overlaid portions of the signal with seismic resonance data from Earth's deep crust and found startling similarities. Patterns that echoed through tectonic frequencies, volcanic activity, even brainwave rhythms during sleep. It was as if the language wasn't being introduced to us, but recognized by us. As if something buried deep within the biology of Earth itself had been waiting to be reactivated by this signal from this object. And that changed everything, because that meant it knew us before we knew ourselves. All assumptions about 3I Atlas's course had placed it on a simple parabolic path, a visitor from interstellar space, slingshotting through our solar system. But a recalculation made by independent astronomers using archived data from Gaia and TESS suggested something far more unsettling. 3I Atlas altered its trajectory slightly before entering our system. Not due to gravitational pull, not from cometary outgassing, but from what appeared to be precise propulsion, a subtle correction that placed it on a path aligning it perfectly between Earth, Mars, and a specific coordinate in the Oort cloud. This wasn't a random traveler, it was navigating, and not through guesswork, but through knowledge of our solar geometry so intricate, it exceeded the capabilities of any known probe. It didn't come here to pass through, it came here to see something, or perhaps to activate something. And that raised the most dangerous possibility of all. If it changed course to get here, then it may already know where it's going next. In a final act of desperation, a rogue data scientist leaked part of the Atlas signal to the public, stripped of encryption, converted into audio, and uploaded anonymously. Most dismissed it as noise, But within fringe scientific forums, digital artists and experimental musicians began playing with it, stretching, folding, slowing it down by orders of magnitude. And what they discovered was impossible to explain. At exactly 432 Hz, the signal formed a harmonic scale, one used in ancient tuning systems across multiple civilizations: Sumerians, Vedic India, pre-Columbian Americas. Then, when mapped visually through sematics, the waveforms produced symbols, some shockingly close to petroglyphs found at ancient archaeological sites. This wasn't coincidence. This was infiltration across time. The signal wasn't just sent now, it had always been here, encoded in echoes of the Earth's deepest cultures. Which begged the question, had 3i Atlas just arrived? Or had it been here before, long ago, and left a message for when we were finally ready to hear it? As the investigations intensified, a senior technician at NASA's archival division stumbled over an old black box from a deep space monitoring mission conducted in 1977. The mission, codenamed Project Bellatrix, was officially listed as failed due to instrument malfunction. However, this box contained raw telemetry data recorded from deep space long before 3i Atlas was ever discovered. Inside that data, a weak, nearly identical signal, buried in analog noise, that matched the exact modulation patterns of the current 3i Atlas transmission. This rewrote the timeline completely. The signal had already reached Earth almost 50 years ago, and no one knew. Or worse, someone did, and they buried it. Analysts scrambled to overlay the 1977 signal with today's transmission, and to their horror, the messages aligned perfectly, like two sides of a broken puzzle. The data suggested that 3i Atlas was not only part of a loop, but that its return was expected. The object didn't just enter our system randomly, it was scheduled. And suddenly, the paranoia that had been bubbling beneath the surface erupted within the highest levels of command. Because if this signal was known since 1977, why wasn't the world warned? Back at Caltech, a team working on the mathematical structure of the signal began to notice something even more disturbing. Embedded within the waveforms, at the deepest level of harmonic dissonance, was a faint but increasingly rapid pulse. At first, it was dismissed as interference or internal instrument feedback. But over time, they realized it had a precise frequency modulation pattern, a slow, accelerating beat. This was not a static transmission. It was a dynamic sequence, a form of internal timing. When cross-referenced against historical solar cycles and orbital alignments, a chilling possibility emerged. The pulse accelerated in proportion to Earth's increasing observational resolution. In other words, the more we looked at 3i Atlas, the faster the pulse became. That led to the hypothesis no one wanted to say aloud. What if the signal is watching us back and counting down to something? The question changed from what is 3i Atlas broadcasting to what happens when the countdown hits zero. In a seemingly unrelated archaeological dig in Cappadocia, Turkey, researchers unearthed an ancient coin buried under layers of volcanic ash. The artifact was unlike anything previously found, minted in a lost language, with symbology that had no cultural origin. But one symbol stood out, a perfect spiral, intersected by a pattern nearly identical to the transmission wave being studied by NASA. At first dismissed as pareidolia, experts from Oxford and MIT confirmed that the spiral's angular spacing precisely matched the 37-minute signal repetition interval from 3i Atlas. The implications were mind-shattering. A coin dated to at least 8,000 years ago matched a transmission from deep space received today. This sparked a terrifying theory. 3i Atlas had not only been here before, its influence had been remembered in fragments, embedded into the subconscious of early civilizations, passed down through symbols, myths, and warnings. It wasn't just ancient astronauts' theory. This was documented memory of something that had already made contact, and perhaps left something behind. Then came the breaking point. A consortium of global radio observatories detected a chilling development. The original frequency tied to 3i Atlas had now split into two, one still tracing to the object itself, and another, a faint twin signal, originating from Earth's upper atmosphere. It was weak, irregular, but undeniably linked. It pulsed in tandem with the original. At first, they thought it was a reflection, a signal bounce, but electromagnetic propagation models disproved that. No, this was new. And worse, it was growing stronger. The implication? 3I Atlas had not only transmitted, it had seeded. Something within its transmission had activated a dormant process inside Earth's ionosphere, now responding in kind. Whether it was a call, a beacon, or a replication cycle, no one knew. But it proved one thing beyond doubt. The signal is no longer just out there. It's here now, and it has begun. The pieces are no longer scattered. They've begun to align, and what they reveal is not just disturbing, it's transformative. The signal from 3I Atlas was never a solitary cry from the dark. It was a mechanism, a key inserted into a lock we never knew existed, a lock buried not in space, but within us, within our planet, and possibly even within our timeline. From the ancient coin to the atmospheric echo, from the forgotten black box to the pulse accelerating with our attention, everything points to one singular, unsettling reality. This was never just an observation. It was activation. NASA's panic is not just about the science. It's not even about what 3I Atlas is. It's about what comes next. Because if this signal is part of a larger design, then we are not simply bystanders in a cosmic narrative. We are participants, possibly pawns, possibly targets, or most terrifyingly, triggers. Because what if we were never meant to hear the signal until now? What if our very act of decoding it, of responding to it, completes a circuit that was waiting for millennia? And what if the countdown we're watching isn't counting down to something? What if it's counting down from the moment we made contact? The world's leading scientists are no longer sleeping, not because they can't solve the mystery, but because deep down, they fear they already have. And what they found didn't just shake our understanding of space, it rewrote our place in it.